So, hearty hello to our German viewers and readers. We are here in London at the Café Concerto. Breakfast is finished already, so we are ready to talk a little about the iconic apocalyptic novel of our times, The Stand by Stephen King, and of course, anthology, The End of the World as we know it, which you and your fellow editor Brian Keene came together and asked 34 authors to contribute a story which takes place in the world of The Stand. We've got a few questions by German readers which we want to ask you.
Sounds good.
So
Yeah,
welcome,
let's do it.
Christopher Golden and Tim Lebbon.
Hi guys, thank you.
So, Chris, the first question is for you. How did the idea to continue The Stand come about?
So Brian Keene and I had done this anthology set in the world of Joe Lansdale's novel The Drive-In, which was a really influential book for so many writers in our generation, sort of teaching us how to break the rules and just let our imaginations run wild. And I had said the previous book that I worked on, anthology, was my last anthology. And when we did The Drive-In, I said, that's my last anthology. And then, I don't know, I was at home one day and I was just thinking, what would be really amazing is to do an anthology of short stories set in the world of The Stand. It's my favorite novel, has been since I first read it. Brian and I are exactly the same age with about 6 or 8 weeks difference. Same thing for him. And so I thought, I called Brian and said, I'm sure he will say no. There's no way he'll agree to let us do this. He's never let anybody do anything like it. And Brian said, well, let's ask him. So we asked him.
Look, this one goes with it. What was the first thing Stephen King said to you when proposing the idea?
So after having a conversation with Brian, I emailed Stephen King, and it took him a few hours to get back to us. And we later found out that during those few hours, he was basically planning to say no, because I guess he didn't like the idea of what he considered a tribute album in a way. And then I guess he changed his mind, and he emailed back 2 words: do it. That's all he said in his initial response: do it.
Question by reader: do you think a project like this would be possible with another work by Stephen King?
Yes, I think that so many of his books would lean, very heavily into this. The 2 that I would most likely like to tackle if we had the opportunity, which I don't think we will have the opportunity, but if we did, The Dark Tower is the one that all the writers are saying, I would love that.
That'd be amazing.
In The Dark Tower. And then Brian and I actually had a really good idea for how to do it with Salem's Lot. I don't think those things are going to come to pass.
No.
But I just think there's so many that would be amazing. But The Stand was, again, Stephen King is your favorite writer of all time, my favorite, Brian's favorite, and The Stand, it is. If you look at every interview that I've ever done in my entire life, and if they ask what my favorite novel was, the answer has always been The Stand. So
Yeah, likewise. And I think it's the Book of Kings that really sort of instantly jumps out and lends itself to a project like this.
And now that project was planned or was approved by Stephen King, how did you and Brian decide who to ask for that contribution?
Such a hard. Well, we knew we were going to have a massive book because we wanted a book that would sit comfortably on the shelf next to The Stand, which itself is so huge. And we wanted to be able to show the sort of depth and breadth of horror as a genre as it stands right now. And so we wanted to make sure that there were people who we knew were influenced by the book, who were big fans of King, but also of this novel. So there were people that we chose for that. And then we wanted to make sure that we had diverse voices. So we wanted to make sure veteran writers, but also much newer writers, independent writers, and again, sort of a sampling of all the different sort of subgenres. So you have extreme horror, you have sort of grief horror, you have body horror, you have all of these sort of things represented in this one book. So we really spent a lot of time on that question.
One of our readers is interested on the author side, so this one's for you. What did you think when you first heard about the idea?
Well, obviously I was so excited because, like Chris, The Stand's probably my favourite novel of all time since I first read it when I was maybe 12 or 13 years old. It's my most reread novel, considering it's probably the longest novel I've ever read. I've probably read it 6 or 7 times. And again, last year as research to write a book for it. So yeah, I was absolutely thrilled to be asked, and it was a dream job really, writing in the world of my favourite novel, my favourite writer. I think everyone probably had the same answer, all the writers. Just amazing to be asked.
Yeah. And did you ever, like expressions, did you consider or think about asking Joe Hill, Owen King, or yourself and Brian to contribute to the book? You
Yes.
didn't, obviously. We know that.
We did ask Joe and Owen
Okay.
if they would like to contribute, and both of them said no. And I don't know why. But if I had to guess, I would think that maybe they have both collaborated with their dad, and also, maybe they didn't want to take up room that other writers might fill. But yes, both of them said they didn't want to do that. For Brian and myself, it was very clear to us that number one, I have put stories in my own in anthologies twice. Once because I was asked to by the publisher, and once because the entire reason that the anthology existed was so I could write this Christmas horror story that I wanted to write. But generally, it's considered bad form. It's considered sort of, just not protocol. And so that was one of the reasons. But the other reason was we just knew that whatever spaces we had, we wanted to make sure that we gave them to other authors. We were already doing it. We didn't need to do that. We changed our minds about that when we read Stephen King's introduction to the book, in which he said he wished we had written stories for the book. So now we regret it, but there it is.
You already had enough work to do.
Yes.
Oh,
Plenty of
I
work,
bet
yeah.
you did, yeah. Now, how did you come up with your story or the plot for your story?
First reaction, my instant reaction was to write a story set far future, like hundreds of years after The Stand. And when I mentioned this to Chris, he said, I knew you'd do that because we know each other so well. But then my mind went back to when I first read the book. And I can remember wondering about what was happening on the space station while the disease was spreading across Earth. So that instantly lit a spark in my mind. And honestly, I thought it's such an obvious idea. So many people would have thought of it, but I was the only one that chose to write a story set in low Earth orbit on a space shuttle. So it just seemed something quite different, something far removed from the situation, but also affected, heavily affected by what's going on Earth.
Okay, and did you chose your topic or the story yourself, or were there anything you and Brian told to authors? You guys write about this, or you about this, or or were the authors mostly free to do?
Mostly free. Mostly free.
Chris and Brian asked for like a 1-paragraph brief on the story. I think partly to make sure two people weren't doing the same thing, but also just to make sure that it fit within the remit that King had given them, so I couldn't have written a story which killed Mother Abigail when she was 30, for instance, something stupid like that, So I suppose you had to negotiate that.
Yeah, we wanted to make sure that there wasn't too much overlap, and we also, all we said really at the beginning to people was we'd like to see stories either during or immediately after or long after. And so we wanted to sort of spread that out a bit. And the other thing was we said, while we can have dreams of Randall Flagg or Mother Abigail, we don't want anybody writing stories specifically about any of the original characters from the novel. The only exception was Wayne Brady and Maurice Broaddus asked for permission to do their story about Mother Abigail, and we got Stephen King to agree to let them do that. But yeah, so you could be at a Free Zone committee meeting, or you could be adjacent to things that happen in the novel. It's fine, but we don't want anybody writing a story like about Trash Can Man.
Which would have been quite interesting.
That would
That would be my choice.
probably.
Yeah. No, I think that made for a really interesting spread of stories as well. Because if people have been writing stories about the established characters, it would have felt like a tribute anthology almost.
Right.
But as it stands, everyone's created their own characters set in the same world, and I think it makes it far more interesting. Virtually anyone reading it, extended universe.
Well, go ahead. Sorry.
So it's just virtually anyone reading the anthology is going to be familiar with the Stand, and that's why they picked it up. There'll be a small proportion that maybe haven't read the Stand, but most people reading it will have that established world in their head anyway. So the stories are extension as opposed to addition, I think.
Yeah. My feeling on it is I feel like if you, as somebody, we both have a lot of tie-in, a lot of licensed fiction, and I feel like if you take, if I had said I want to write a story about the Trash Can Man, that automatically narrows what I'm going to do with the story to a certain set of rules. How am I going to write that story? And it feels a bit more like fan fiction.
Yeah.
But if you say, write me a story set in this world and it can be anything you want, then you're going to get the best Tim Lebbon story. You're going to get the best Tanana Reeve Dew and Stephen Barnes story. You're going to get the best from that person rather than just them focusing in on one thing that feels like there are sort of walls around it. And the way we approached it, there were no walls around it.
And also, you write about established characters, and readers going to know what happens to them or what doesn't happen to them. That reduces the level of threat to your characters. Because you can't write about Trashy killing because you know what happens to him.
Thank you for the insights into the anthology. Let's come back a little bit. There are a few more questions about the original work by Stephen King. So the first one for both of you: when did you read The Stand for the first time?
I was about 13, and I was in an airport bookstore when I saw the paperback, and I bought it to read on the trip. And I still remember seeing it on the shelf and that cover, which I love so much. And I don't know, it just sort of spoke to me, and I read that for the first time then. And I do remember that the last 300 pages I read in one night. I stayed up till like 3:30 in the morning to finish it. And I've read it. I think I've read it 5 times with another one about to happen. So
yeah, you're about to read it again.
Probably in January.
Right. Yeah. Sounds to look forward to. Yeah, I was about 13 or 14. I think I'd read. I progressed from kids fiction into reading James Herbert and Clive Barker, and then Stephen King. Before The Stand, I think I'd read The Shining and Salem's Lot, and then straight onto The Stand, and loved it from the first moment. I can't remember much about the process of when I read it, but I probably read it 5 or 6 times as well.
This one goes with it. What does The Stand mean to you? It's
part of the reason I'm a writer, I think. I mean, Stephen King's work in general is to blame for me being a writer, without a doubt. But the Stand really such epic, powerful storytelling, and don't try and replicate it, but it certainly informs lots of what I write now, without a doubt.
Yeah, the same. And I would just add that for me, as a writer, I think The Stand is one of the primary reasons I fell in love with characters, and why it's so important for me to have characters who feel like actual people. Because when characters die in The Stand, or when things happen in The Stand, like, you feel it. And somebody recently asked me my advice about writing, if I could sum it up in one word, and I said, make the reader care about your characters and make them hurt for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Here's another one. Who of the original characters do you identify yourself the most, and why?
My first thought is Stu Redman, and I think in my mind it's because he's the character that leads you into The Stand. He's the one you meet first. I'm right, aren't I? Stu Redman, first. Yeah, in the gas station.
Yeah. No,
or was it Glenn?
No, it's isn't it Franny? At the beginning, anyway.
Oh, right, at the beginning. But
yes.
But for me, Stu Redman.
Oh yeah, of course at Haps, yeah, at
Haps,
Pumps,
yeah, the Pumps, yeah. And I always just remember him being the character. He, for me, in my mind, he's the main character. Even though there's a whole whole cast of main characters, but for me, it's always Stu that sort of he's almost telling the story and communicating the story to us. Not sure why I relate to him really. I think he's sort of a steady influence on other people in the book. He's a little damaged at the beginning and he remains a little damaged at the end. So I really, he appeals to me as a character a lot.
I've been with this book coming out, I've been asked this question a bunch of times, and Brian always says that when he was a young man, for him, and if you know Brian at all, you'll see this completely, for him it was Larry Underwood, but as he's gotten older, it's Glenn Bateman. And I understand that completely. For me, it's the same as Tim. It's Stu Redman, but I've had an opportunity to really think about why that is, and I just feel like I grew up, my parents were divorced when I was 11. My dad was not really around very much when I was a kid. And I always say that I learned right and wrong from reading comic books. You know, so I had a very sort of firm idea of what I felt was right and wrong. A character like Stu, as you said, like he's a bit damaged, he's gone through a lot, but he's just constantly just trying to do the right thing.
Yeah.
You know, even with the whole situation with Franny and Harold, he's trying to do the right thing. And I think that that's what makes him so such a connection for me. I identified with him, and I still do, because you know, even with the world falling apart around him, he's still just trying to do the right thing.
Right.
So, Stu for sure.
Stu, for the both of you.
Yeah.
And one last question: what would you have done differently if you were a character in the stand?
I mean, as a general thing, maybe go and find an island to live on somewhere. You know, which is a theme tackled in the book actually. Bev Vincent's story is in the book. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
I don't know. What would I have done differently?
As yourself, but also as a particular character. I can think of like I immediately think of Larry Underwood.
Yeah.
When Nadine comes in.
Nadine, yeah.
And she leaves, and you know, I think he saw the pain in her, and he could have prevented a lot of horrible things from happening if he had said, "Come in and sit with us, and let's try to just be human beings together."
Right.
As far as myself, I don't know. I mean, I feel like I would have been in a hurry to get to Mother Abigail's thing.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Difficult question.
I don't know. Yeah.
Difficult last. So,
I mean, I certainly wouldn't have gone to Vegas. I like to think I wouldn't have gone to Vegas.
I don't want to go to Vegas now.
No.
because of the book, everything's 80s.
No, just in general.
Just generally, yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, I think King chose the two perfect places for the different people to congregate. Yeah, Vegas being the prime one.
Okay, so thank you very much, Chris and Tim.
Thank you.
Cheers, Alan.
Pleasure talking to you,
Yeah.
and thank you.
Cheers. Thank you, guys.